The other question is, this is a question I'll ask Barry later on, but it's, why should Australia, along with Scotland, be the leaders in media studies and media education? Do you have any speculation about that?
Part of it, I think, is the system that promotes it. That we have in Australia, each state has a highly centralised education system. Now that doesn't account for why it started there, but it does mean that if someone had the bright idea, it is quite possible to have that bright idea implemented very quickly and to saturation level, because it's a highly centralised system. Unlike Canada or the United States or England, whereby you have local education authorities or local school boards, each of whom must be convinced to take on media studies in the curriculum. Whereas at home, really, and that was Barry's task in the early years, was to convince one single authority that it was worth doing. Once you've achieved that, then it's in straight across the board. And Scotland's the same. They have a central education authority, which I think allows the opportunity for more efficient implementation. Why those places? I don't know. In my own state, it began by Barry McMahon, his own personal interests, which he then followed up. He went overseas and studied very deliberately to come home and start media education, which he did. It really related back to one person in the beginning. It doesn't any longer. I mean, I would suggest, at the risk of hurting his feelings, he is now irrelevant to it. It is part of the curriculum that will go on apart from him.
In Australia, has been fortunate to attract some of the best sort of intellectuals that deal with cultural studies.
Yes, we have been very lucky, and my home state has been particularly lucky. We're lucky because the English like a place in the sun, so coming to Australia is a guaranteed place in the sun. So into my own state have come John Hartley, whose work you might be familiar with from reading television, and John Fisk spent a number of years there. And John Fisk was highly influential at the time he was there. He participated in a series of workshops that was done with teachers, and John Fisk is a very fine teacher, a very, very good teacher. And he was able to take some of the more difficult conceptual material and translate it into accessible packages for teachers. Now, John didn't pretend to be able to teach kids, but what he could give was something to teachers which they could then take one step further and turn into strategies for the classroom. And Fisk had a very fine influence in that way. He also made it legitimate for people to work with popular texts. Here was someone who was published, who was respected in his area, who was a senior lecturer at a university there, and he is dealing with Madonna, video games, shopping malls, swimming pools, beaches, barbecues, the full bit. And so he legitimised the study of popular culture. Not for everyone, there's lots of people there who think it's an absolute waste of time, but it was a start.
Yeah, the other question is, sort of, if you could cast your glance to Canada and make some kind of prediction of what's going on in terms of media literacy. It's been implemented in Ontario, and it's located in English departments here, and some people are not sure that that's a good thing, because essentially it means that you have a territory and all the English teachers are able to do the analysis. Well, I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you comment anything about media literacy in Canada and the structure that it's evolving?
I've been most impressed with the level of the debate that I've found in Ontario in terms of media studies. It seems to have got much higher far more quickly than it did at home. The teachers that I've spoken to are well educated in the area, and to their credit, most of that seems to be self-education and the work of the AML in their own workshops. What I think needs to happen here to ensure the place of media literacy and the continuation of it is that you must get some form of media education into your teacher training institutions. There must be a way for teachers to say, or students to say, I want to teach media studies when I come out and I want formal training in that. Until you get that, then it's always going to be ad hoc and depending upon someone's interest in the school and what to do when someone leaves that school. Whereas if you've actually got teacher trainees coming out and graduating with that area of expertise, then I think it will ensure its survival. Its place in the English studies program, I have mixed feelings about it. At home, that's largely the case as well. It hasn't always been. At first I was against it, and we actually had teachers who taught solely media studies. And that was fine, and they were outside of English departments, but they became quite isolated and marginalised because there were often only one or two of them. They weren't part of the mainstream of the staff in the staff room and didn't have the same access as larger departments to school resources. As part of an English department, those problems are overcome. Against it, of course, you often have an ongoing struggle within a department between certain critical approaches that are seen to be either valid or invalid by members of the department.